This is Ashia. I am back for just a quick video about my life with endometriosis. I apologize. It's been some time since I last posted, but life and things have kind of gotten in the way and I just hadn't had a chance to post another video. But I wanted to take a quick moment to share the story about why I started this in the first place. I had an experience a couple of years ago, which is actually when I started posting the videos, where I got really sick and ended up in the hospital. Just to make a long story as short as possible, for the majority of that year, 2011, I was really sick and tired. I didn't really celebrate my birthday. I missed out on kind of a 15-year high school reunion barbecue get-together that I helped plan, but I couldn't go because I was too sick, too tired, and in too much pain and fatigue. I got to the point where I couldn't eat anything. I would eat food, but I couldn't hold it down. Everything made me sick. And so it was in July. 1 week, I basically lost a matter of 10 pounds in 7 days without trying. And so like my face got really gaunt and I just looked really sickly. And so, of course, my mother saw me, took one look at me, and was like, I'm taking you to the emergency room right now. And so she took me to the both my parents took me to the emergency room, and they admitted me the fastest I'd ever been admitted into the emergency room any other time I've ever gone. I haven't gone to the emergency room tons of times, thank goodness, but when I went there and I had a slightly distended abdomen, I explained to the lady in receiving, what I had been going through, what was wrong, how I was feeling, how I had lost weight, why I looked so sick. And she was like, it sounds like you might have a bowel obstruction. You need to go right now. And within a matter of 30 minutes, I was processed in the back on a bed with a gown waiting to see a doctor. And so that really let me know how severe it was, because everyone who's ever been to an emergency room knows you have to wait. Just because there's a lot of people coming, it's usually a very highly emotional, intense situation, and they can't see everyone at the same time, and they have to pick the most critical patients first. And being as that I got admitted so fast, I knew that what was happening wasn't good and it could have gone bad. And so I went. Unfortunately, I didn't have insurance, which was one of the reasons why I was very hesitant to go to the doctor. And also, I've had endometriosis for quite some time, and I've gotten accustomed to being in pain and to have to deal with pain. And so I would just lay up with my heating pad, wait for the cramps to subside, and then try to go about my day. Unfortunately, that actually led to me getting a burn from my heating pad on my stomach from, I would sleep on, and I would go to bed on my heating pad, because that was the only way that I knew to have some level of comfort and be able to exist normally. And so between popping ibuprofen and being on the heating pad and still being fatigued and not really having a lot of energy, my quality of life was it was down the crapper. I was taking birth control, which is, as I've said before, a hormonal way to manage endometriosis, but it didn't stop me from being in pain. It didn't stop me from being on my cycle nonstop for several months at a time. Like, it just didn't prevent any of that. But because, there's no cure, and I don't want to have excision surgery. I don't want to be opened up again to try to remove the endometriosis. And they don't like to do that. It's not like that's an immediate, let's have surgery to get rid of this type of situation. It's like, let's try to manage this without surgery, which is what I was doing. But apparently not very well. And so I ended up in the hospital. And my bowel was distended, and what they were thinking was that I had a bowel obstruction based on the symptoms that I had given them and things that I had talked about. And I also told them about my endometriosis, because I'm very knowledgeable about my medical history. I can't stress this enough to you ladies, even gentlemen, even if you don't have endometriosis, just in general, know your history. If you have some type of emergency situation where you end up and you're at a hospital or a doctor's office that is not your own, and they don't have access to your records, and you don't carry them around with you, because who does, you need to be able to tell them what you've experienced, because how else are they going to treat you? If not, they're just going to be treating the illness, disorder, condition, whatever it is that you have, but it doesn't take into account your own lifestyle and your own experiences. So I'm very knowledgeable about my endometriosis and the different procedures that I've had as it relates to that, and my fibroids and the cyst and everything that I've had to deal with when it comes to that. So when I went to the doctor, I explained, you know, about my whole situation, and I asked her if she thought that the endometriosis was causing the bowel obstruction, and she said she didn't know. She said it's very possible, but without being able to actually go in and look and see, they could only see when I did the MRI that there was scar tissue, which, you know, that's what endometriosis is. It is scar tissue that is outside of the about outside of your uterus. So, you know, they didn't know what the scar tissue was. They just knew that it was there and couldn't really tell me why it happened, which is like all of a sudden I just have scar tissue. Never had any types of issues or surgery outside of my endometriosis. So why would this be happening on my bowels? So for me, that just let me know that it was the endometriosis, and, you know, it was causing me some issues. So what ended up happening was I ended up being in the hospital for about 4 days. They had to put a tube down into my stomach to drain the fluid from my bowels so that they could kind of function normally and process food the way they're supposed to. Unfortunately, that had to be done while I was awake, and it had to be done the first day. And so essentially they put a tube up your nose, because it goes like this. Put a tube up your nose, it goes up down into your stomach, and then, you know, you kind of sit while it drains. Now that sucked. I would not wish this on my worst enemy. It was the most terrible. It was uncomfortable. It, you know, it was just really bad, and I wouldn't want anyone else to have to ever go through that. And so I understand if anyone ever has, because it sucks. I can't think of another way to explain it except for that it sucks. And I basically sat with that tube for about 2.5 days until they took it out, and then another day or so before they were able to release me, after my stomach kind of stayed down and I was able to tolerate sort of food. And so I came home. And once I got home, I just made some decisions that I was going to change my lifestyle, and I was going to do any and everything I could to get myself as healthy as possible, so that, you know, I can soldier through this endometriosis. And I vowed that I would never let it get to the point where I am too sick and tired to do anything. And I also want to share my story, because as we all hear about endometriosis, and we're starting to hear about it more in the news, which I definitely appreciate, but it's still always as it relates to reproduction. It's always as it relates to someone's ability or inability to have kids, and it's usually after they've had kids. There is a soap star that, and I cannot remember her real name right now, but she's on General Hospital. Maxie is her name, and I remember her getting really sick because they had kind of a reality show that they did last year, and she started getting really sick, and she actually had to leave the show. And it was because she has endometriosis and probably fibroids, and, you know, whatever else might come with that. But they didn't really go into a lot of detail. They just said, you know, she was sick, and then she even left the soap. Like, she wasn't on the soap. She had to have another lady came in to play her part, and then, you know, she got better, came back, and now she's back on the show. But now it's coming out, she is pregnant, expecting her first child with her husband, and then they kind of mention as a footnote, yeah, she had endometriosis, which was why she got so sick. But it's still a footnote as it relates to her reproduction. And I want people to realize and recognize that endometriosis, yes, it is a reproductive situation in that it starts from the uterus and kind of goes out, but it goes out. So when you have it, it doesn't just affect your ability to have kids or not have kids. It can all of a sudden pop up and be on your bowel and cause you to have a bowel obstruction, have to go to the hospital. I've joined a few Facebook groups where, you know, there are some ladies who mentioned they had endo on their gallbladder, and so they had to go and get surgery to get their gallbladder either fixed or removed, whatever the doctor decides. But, you know, it can happen. When I went to my doctor initially, she diagnosed me with stage 4 endometriosis, which is kind of the more aggressive. And this was because endometrio tissue had gotten into my belly button, and it caused my belly button to bleed every month when I was on my cycle. And so I had to have a surgery to cut off a piece of my belly button, so because that was the tissue to stop that from bleeding, because your belly button should bleed. It's not normal. And my doctor said, well, you know, your endometrial tissue is growing up. It could have gotten on your lung and caused your lungs to collapse. Like, this is some of the things that people without endometriosis and people in the media speaking of endometriosis as a reproductive only issue are missing. It's not. It's a whole body issue. You have to really be diligent and really be aware of your body, and you have to understand what that means. And if, as a doctor, when you have a patient who comes in and she has something that seems out of the ordinary, it could be that because the endometrial tissue, like I said in previous videos, it's just kind of floating around your body, and it can land anywhere. It can end up wherever. And if it's there, it's shedding, it's being there because you shouldn't have scar tissue in your body, then it can cause problems. So I just wanted to kind of quickly-ish tell my story and just give you some background into what inspired me here. I would love to hear your stories. I promise I'm going to get better about videos. I'm going to do more just information. If you have questions, if things have happened, please post a video response, post a comment, share this with your friends. If you know someone suffering, you know, just support them and just understand that they're not being dramatic. And regardless of what you think, you know, you cannot, even as a woman who doesn't have endometriosis, it's really tough to understand what it feels like to be in pain, to feel like you have cramps all the time. That's tough when you don't. And so I just say, you know, the best way to be there for somebody who has it is to listen and to be supportive. And, you know, don't tell them it's going to be okay, it's going to get better, because sometimes they just may want to complain, or they just may want you to be there while they lay with their heating pad on their stomach or sit sipping, you know, tea to make themselves feel better.